Welcome back to the second season of Reimagining You the Pilates Way. We're so excited to be back and looking forward to covering new topics, exploring more about areas we've already covered, and welcoming some lovely guests to the podcast. We're kicking off this season with a theme of identity, and in today's episode, we'll be chatting about how our perceptions of self and who we feel we are can shape what we believe we can do. And this can mean we might believe Pilates or some aspects of Pilates are out of our reach. So let's talk about why everyone can do Pilates. So as you know, Claire, I am a great one for excuses. I am
You're the queen.
of all the reasons why I can't exercise. And honestly, even though I know how much it benefits me, if I didn't pay in advance, I'm sure I would be ducking out of my Pilates class. I'm too tired, I haven't got time, I'm aching, I can't afford it. This time of year, don't really want to leave the house, so the list goes on. But one thing I do know, and I will admit, is that I always regret it if I skip a week. How about you?
Well, I don't usually skip a week. I'm
so.
not full of excuses, that's for sure. And it's interesting that you notice when you miss it and you feel bad. We find that so often with people when they have a holiday. They really know when they come back into class the accumulated benefits that they've had in their body. Me personally, I have my own daily practice that has built, like it's a built-in routine in my day. So it's really easy once you've built the routine. But as soon as you break away from that routine, like just by staying away somewhere else, you have to really work harder at fitting it in, I've got to admit, even for me.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's a little bit heartening to know and something to aspire to. So all of that said about all my excuses, I've practiced Pilates for many years and it's become part of what I do, and maybe a little bit. And actually, as I say that, I'm thinking we're making a podcast about it. So I do feel like if I can do it, then anyone can. But I didn't always feel like that. And honestly, if I think back, I'm not sure I even knew how to pronounce Pilates.
Oh, brilliant.
Originally, like when I first heard about it, I wouldn't have known what it was. Unless you hear someone say Pilates, it looks like pilots.
It's not obvious, is it?
Yeah,
pilots,
yes, yeah. So I've obviously spent far too much time with you because now I truly believe that a regular Pilates practice can heal most ills. What's that quote you've got in the studio? Is it whatever the question is, Pilates is the answer?
It sure is.
Yeah,
definitely. Pilates is definitely the answer, whatever the question. I think I actually need to get a t-shirt printed up with that on it, because I think most people don't actually perceive Pilates as an answer or as a solution to whatever the ailment they might have, or the reconditioning that they need to do post-surgery or post-baby or whatever it is, that somehow they have to have achieved something or got somewhere to do it, or that it's for a certain type of person that they're not. And I know, I mean, honestly, really whatever's happening, I have a Pilates perspective that is going to help or resolve or lead in a possible, like a positive direction. We had an experience recently where somebody came to the studio, first time ever. She'd had a lot of different surgeries and things going on, and people that she had experienced before in other avenues were sharing with her what she couldn't do.
Okay.
Whilst she knew what she couldn't do, she felt in her body the restrictions that were there. It was obvious. But there was always this, well, you can't do that, and you can't do that, and you shouldn't do this, and you shouldn't do that. And then she came here, and for the first time, she was listened to, and she was told lots of things she could do.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing for me, is that there's a lot of things that people can do.
Yes.
And we're in a lot of environments where we're looking at the negatives and what we can't do.
Yeah. Do you know, I was in a class only the other week, and it was just reminding me, someone had a broken toe.
Oh yeah, of course you can still do Pilates with a broken toe.
But I can't, even having done Pilates, I'd have thought, well, can't do that because you
had
get
somebody in
damaged.
with a pot on their foot for however long she had to have the pot on, she had that. I've had people in, so today I had somebody who's within the last just over 6 months had 2 hip replacements, and she's back on the reformer and she's waiting a knee surgery. I've had multiple people break toes more than you imagine.
Yeah.
So I've had quite a few broken toes. Not in the studio,
No.
not because of, but they've been
in.
able to go to Pilates nevertheless. I've had somebody who's come in with frozen shoulder, which is a very common thing, you know, with restricted range of movement in their shoulder. So anyway, I mean, I could probably think of lots of other things too.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've recommended Pilates to lots of people, and some have taken it up and some haven't. Some won't even consider it for one reason or another. And the reasons they give aren't necessarily about the practicalities of Pilates itself, like I can't find a class or I can't find a studio. It's in relation to how they perceive themselves. So it's them that are putting the barriers in the way, and for really good reasons, usually what they would believe were quite good reasons. So what I'd really like to know before we kind of go into depth is, what do you say to someone who's putting barriers in the way of something that could potentially really help?
It's such a fascinating one, because actually the barriers that people put up are so varied. And, you know, we've had great conversations before about, you know, the cost. You were like, wow, it costs that much at the beginning.
Yeah.
And the idea also, some of the barriers are things like what you have to wear. I don't have the right clothes for Pilates, or it's I'm not the right weight, I'm not the right age. There's all of these reasons, these barriers that people think, and it's so opposite to that. So I always say to people that actually we're really seeing everybody as a possible candidate to do Pilates, because literally everybody can do it. There are no barriers to it. As long as you can follow instruction, that's probably the thing. And we instruct in a way that would even adapt, because we teach about learning styles. So even that, you know, it's really, there is no barrier. So what I always say to people is about, we're looking for possibilities.
Yeah.
And there are always possibilities. So we're looking for what you can do, not identifying what you can't do. And that is unique. And it's very different in other environments that you go to, where perhaps you're going for treatment somewhere, like a physiotherapist, where it's their job and they must do this to identify what the problem is, treat the problem, off you go. Whereas it's very different for us. We might identify where there's potential for more range of movement. We're not saying there's a weakness.
Yes.
We're saying, look, here's potential to move more, do more, achieve more, which is quite different, I think.
Yeah. So I'd really like to go through some examples of what we're going to call identities. So that's how people perceive themselves and the impact that might have on what somebody feels able to do. So I'm going to start off with a recent conversation that I had with an older relative. So I'll tell you a little bit about her. So she's in her late 70s. She's pretty active. Actually, I think you would class as pretty active in terms of regular exercise. She quite likes long walks, but recently she's had a lot of knee pain, and she had an x-ray. She was told she's got arthritis in her knee, which she was really annoyed, actually, which was to be expected at her age.
Oh, that's the most frustrating statement.
Yeah.
That to be expected is such an upsetting and deep phrase that lands with people from the pelvic health clients that I work with, because they've had children. That's to be expected. It's your age, so your joints are to be expected, degeneration to be expected. And actually, it's unfair to put that on people because it creates a limiting identity for that person, which they might not have had, because this person sounds like they're quite active, positive, they do things, and now their esteem or their belief is going to have dropped.
You're going to be in pain, and that's what it's going to be. So anyway, obviously I said to her, well, you need to go and do Pilates. And I even looked up like a place where she lived. There was quite a good place nearby, but she said, well, I can't do Pilates because my knees hurt too much. And she's worried that she'll go and have to do more than she's able, or she'll end up pushing herself too hard and her knees will be worse. And I think there's also a bit of a feeling of being a bit too old to start something new. So that would be a really new thing for her. She's late 70s, a bit old to start something new. And I think that pain can become an identity.
For sure.
Can't it? So what's been your experience with that?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because one of the other barriers that I see in that sort of similar situation about being that age, had a diagnosis of whatever, considering going to a class, and then perhaps being singled out in some way as well, because of that pain or that injury or that whatever that thing
you can't
is,
do the movement,
that you
that's
can't
the thing.
do that thing, so you're going to do this thing instead, and then it highlights that difference. Or like she said, that she might push through and make that pain worse. And in my experience, and certainly the way that I work and we work here at the studio, is that we're welcoming people in, and everybody is going to be doing what's right for them, versus this unified, everybody just does this exercise because this exercise is what's next.
Okay.
So it's expected from the beginning that people are going to do what's appropriate for them.
Okay.
Even if that's in a reformer class, that your spring is 2 reds and the person next to you it's 3, or whatever it is. There are these gentle shifts that can be made to be more inclusive to everybody, so there isn't a barrier there. And as for, starting something new, I don't think it matters what age you are. It can feel nerve-wracking. We started a podcast and
in our 40s, listeners.
But we did. And that was nerve-wracking for us to start something new. So I don't know that age necessarily is, plays into that so much. I do think that because in an exercise, what's seen as an exercise environment, we think of it as a movement environment, but if you're not in it, you don't know that. And so that person coming in, so at 70, actually, the demographic of our client base are all around that is peak. We have a lot of people that are starting in their 50s, 60s and 70s.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Absolutely amazed. And it's not modified for an age group. It's not, everybody is in together.
It's interesting, isn't it? And I'm thinking about the current climate as well. In the UK and in the USA, we've just got a king who's in his 70s, Queen Consort in the 70s. We've got Joe Biden.
And I can't tell.
It's amazing,
but
isn't
looking
it?
at them all thinking, they benefit from a little bit of Pilates.
Brilliant. But absolutely brilliant. But I think that is so important to think about, that actually you can start it at any age. You won't find it too hard because it will be tailored to you, and that pain doesn't need to become your identity, because it's more about what you can do rather than what you can't do. Okay, so now I want to talk about an identity that was me about 10 years ago, but still. So I got really into running. Became a real love, made loads of friends, so it was quite social, and also it becomes quite addictive. It's a bit of a fix. If you go 3 times a week and you go on certain nights or something like that, and then if you miss, get grumpy. And So one of the things that
I
runners
like that about Pilates.
Oh. So one of the things that runners always fear is injury, because it stops them going in races or just going for those runs, which are really good for mental health. It's
Yeah.
good for physical health. But honestly, one of the things that I was really bad at as a runner, and I think
feel
I
like I
speak
know
for
what
a
you're gonna
lot,
say.
yeah, was stretching, and it's a known joke in like the running community that we'd probably take time out for sports massage maybe, and then we'd pretend that yes, you know, we stretch before and after a run, but replacing a run with a Pilates session, like why would you? Because I'm a runner and that's my identity and this is my community. So if I go to Pilates, I might miss a run. So how do you sort of navigate that?
If you were to miss a run and do Pilates, but so say you do 3 runs a week and you swap 1 run for Pilates, and your other 2 runs you kept beating, you were able to beat your whatever your
PB.
Sorry, totally clueless.
Or your PR in America.
Okay, PB or PR.
Yeah.
If you were going to then improve that consistently by doing 1 less run and swapping it for a Pilates, would you do it?
Yeah.
Would you do it if you were less prone to injury, that you didn't have to go for sports massage, you didn't have to stretch before and after?
Yes.
Then Pilates is the answer. We come full circle. I think that again, it's that the notion of what Pilates is, and that somehow it's not a friend of running, and
It's
actually
still, it feels like the perception of it, and if I think back, was that it was quite still and it was a light bit of stretching.
Oh, you a light bit of stretching, and as you now know, it isn't a light bit of stretching, and it can be very much tailored to running. And of course, I have to say, you know, not all studios are the same, not all Pilates classes are the same. I'm speaking from my beliefs, my experiences, and my teachings. And if you have access to the sort of thing that we offer here, where you're doing apparatus based, where you've got the resistance and assistance of the springs to re-educate the movement that you do in running, you're re-educating the recoil of your connective tissue in your body, so its ability to stretch and then dive forward in your run.
So basically, I'm going to run better.
You're going to run better.
We need to do an episode on this.
Oh yeah, okay,
yeah.
There's
An episode come on this. So just moving on to another identity that was not me, but I think it was. This was you. Maybe was. So if someone had told me that I was going to do Pilates in a Pilates studio, I would have felt a bit scared. Especially looking at the reformer and some of the equipment. Is it even called that?
Apparatus.
The apparatus in the Pilates gym. So I used to think it was probably for dancers and like really flexible people, like not normal people like me. And actually, revelation, I used to dance till I was about 14.
Oh my
15.
goodness, the revelations about you just keep coming.
But at no point did I ever feel like I was a dancer. I just used to enjoy it. So I was never very good at it. I was always, this won't surprise you, I was always too fast for the music and I wasn't particularly flexible. So I know that you were and
I mean, I'm not a dancer.
No, you were a dancer, you studied dance. So is there a link to Pilates? Like if I'm a dancer, is Pilates for me?
Well, it's definitely for you, because it's going to help to bring more control into your movement, so that you're not hanging out in your joints, you're less likely to injure your joints, just as we were saying about running. And you know, there is an actual connection between Pilates and dance. That's not to say that all dancers will have had an experience of Pilates. Joseph Pilates studio in New York happened to be in the same building as a dance company, which meant that dancers went to him and had successful experiences. When they'd been injured, they were sent to Joe. Joe fixed them. That was the description. And then because he could identify the areas that needed brought back into balance and given strength and stability back, and they were fantastic after that. Loads. And there's exercises that are named after some dancers too.
So what was your kind of story around being a dancer and Pilates?
I had done Pilates and didn't even really know it was called Pilates for a long time. And very recently, I found my first ever Pilates studio program that I typed out from my lessons in the Pilates studio from 1998. And it wasn't even, listen to this though, it wasn't even called the Reformer. I didn't at that point yet know it was called the Reformer, because the teacher described it as the plie machine.
The plie machine, like a
yes. So I have my exercises on the plie machine that I did. Well, because we were at dance school, and plie was a term that we really understood because we were doing it at the ballet bar most days.
Okay.
So it's just absolutely fascinating. So as a dancer, we did practice Pilates most days. Then I was injured, so I actually was sent to Joe's, but it was sent to Diane's, and I had my knee injuries, and there wasn't really much alternative to do but do Pilates. So I did that every day. It was about 9 months that I was doing it, and
on the plie machine,
and the Cadillac and some other apparatus too. And by the end of that, I was stronger, I was more flexible, and I danced like a new person.
Amazing.
To the point that we did a rehearsal. I had to go straight into rehearsal, and I was jettying across to the studio. I know it sounds ridiculous now. I can imagine it across the studio, and it was obvious, not just to me but my peers, that my movement had a different energy and emphasis in it than it ever had before. And as much as at the time, I'm not going to lie, I was pretty resentful that all I was doing
was lots of stretching.
I was the machine, because I was there to dance. And then in that moment, reflected in their experience of me jettying better than ever before, I thought, actually, I can see that and feel that there is something in this. And then I just kept up a practice every day since then.
Okay. And what about that idea on the flip side of that reformer, I'm thinking about reformer in particular, I think, I'm not sure why, is for dancers, like that it's for people that know how to move, they're flexible, they know how to get into positions that a normal person wouldn't be able to do.
For sure. I mean, I would say don't look on Instagram at pictures of Pilates, because it will look like the dancer that can already make perfect shapes. And shapes is not what Pilates is. Pilates is not Teaser Tuesday where everybody makes that shape and it's a photo. It isn't the end position. It's not a shape. It's not a performance. It's the experience of doing the plie, doing the footwork on the reformer, doing whatever movement you're doing towards the end. And it's not the end, it's the point, it's the process to get there. And that's where you're learning more about yourself. That's where you're actually getting stronger. That's where you're improving your sense of self. And it's called proprioception and interoception, where you feel yourself. And in the world that we're living in, with all the technologies that we have, those senses are being dulled all the time. And that's really not what we need as a society. We need to be able to feel ourselves, because then we can have more empathy for others if we can feel ourselves.
And we've had that discussion before where I've said, like, am I getting stiffer? Am I becoming more, or am I just becoming more aware?
But honestly, it isn't for that. It isn't those posy pictures that you see on Instagram. Those are just that's just
the end result, isn't it? It's the aha, the ta-da, that's the word I'm looking for.
It is. And also that's like one like
It's one
piece
second
of
of the
it.
class, isn't
It's
it?
one piece of it. And the beautiful things that you see online are one piece of
Yeah.
it. And that's one representation. What's little represented is what goes on in our studio, the real life of Pilates, where it's everyone from the 16-year-old daughter in one studio while the mum is in the other studio, and we've got a mother and daughter doing a class together with, you know, it's all ages.
Yeah. So talking of mother, daughter,
yeah.
I just want to move on to another identity which both of us can identify with. So we're both mums, aren't we? And I know a lot of our listeners are too. And I don't know about you, but I truly believe that nothing can prepare you for how your life will change after you've had a baby in so many ways. And I can remember thinking that maternity leave after I had the baby, after I'd had the baby, would be easier than being at work. I love how you're laughing now. Until
naivety.
I can remember it hitting me that I'm never going to clock off from this. Like, it still goes on at night as well. And someone once described those early days to me of having a baby as being like a hamster on a wheel. Like, you feed, change, sleep, feed, change. Like, it just goes on. And combined with sleep deprivation, I'm really selling this here, aren't I? I found motherhood, at least in the early days, all consuming. You're the same person somewhere, but also entirely different.
Yeah.
And I had my two boys fairly close together, so I felt like I never really came up for air in between. And then suddenly, and it was slow, really slow, I felt like I was coming out the other end, but with no idea who I was. So I was the same person, but different. And I still don't know, to an extent, if I'm honest. How about you? What was your experience?
Oh my gosh. Going, and funny because I was just talking to a client today who's pregnant with her second. And what I said to her was going from 0 to 1 was so much harder than going from 1 to 2.
You're shaking. I'm shaking my head because everyone said it to me and it was a lie. It was a lie.
Oh my God.
Go on anyway, and I'll share.
I think for me, it was definitely harder to go from 0 to 1 because, and I was quite young. I was in my 20s when I had my first. None of my friends had any children. I was the trailblazer. So there was nobody for me to call upon. You know, I had nobody to follow. And so that was quite challenging to not know, like you say, you know, who am I? I didn't really know who I was as a mum even. How was I going to be a mum in that time with this beautiful baby? And it was physically, that was the thing that was most challenging for me, was that because I identified as a dancer. So at that point in my life, I was a dancer. I was strong, I was flexible, I was fit, I could power through, because when you're performing dance, you're powering through pain quite often, and you have to have such resilience. So I thought, I'm so totally cut out for childbirth because I am a dancer. And the reality was, I wasn't, because I wasn't flexible in the right way, in the right places to give birth with ease. So I had some intervention for my birth. So we're definitely going to talk more about that in the future, and the kind of experience of that. What it then meant was that my identity as dancer was very confused after that. And my identity in my body, which was my tool, my craft, everybody looked at it because you perform on the stage. Didn't look like it looked before. It didn't feel like it felt before. I couldn't do the exercises and movements that I did before. And it took quite a process for me to navigate my new identity. And one of the things that I did was I created something to serve me and the other people I was with, which was primer size, where we were, doing movement and exercise that was really safe and appropriate.
Yeah.
And then that started this new identity into sort of empowering women and telling my story more and all of that.
I love that story, because you turned something that could possibly have been really negative into, okay, so I can't do that, but I can do this.
Oh, that's me all over. I can't do that.
But what a great mentality to have, and one that I think I would like to have a lot, and I do, but I would like to have more. So it's a nice thing to think about being able to do. So there's lots of feelings, aren't there, linked to motherhood, and especially after you've had the child. Like some of them you kind of covered. I'm too fat. I'm unfit. Yeah. I don't fit in my clothes. I can't spend the money on the class. You might not
haven't bounced back yet.
Haven't bounced back. I'm not like the celebrities that are straight into whatever. I can't go to Pilates class because what about my baby? I definitely had that one with my first. Or I'm a mum now, so shouldn't I be doing classes with the baby? Not for myself. And I think that was one of my revelations with identity, was the second time around, was when I came to your class.
Yeah.
And wait a minute, for an hour a week, which is nothing, but made all the difference. I did something that was primarily, well, it was 100% for me, and the baby was okay there, so that was fine. He was all right. I found something sort of for you, for me. Have you found that with other women?
So many women have that same kind of dilemma around going from caring for yourself and your, especially that 0 to 1, where your time is your own, your space is your own, your sleep is your own, everything is your own. And then you go to being mom, where it's much more about the caring for the baby. So your thoughts are consumed by it, your time, everything is consumed by the needs of another. And slowly but surely, the needs of yourself can be pushed to one side or out the window altogether. And so the idea of doing something, and this is what people say, I just feel guilty.
Yes.
Feel actually guilty about taking that time out. And, I think, and you'll probably say the same thing, I'm not sure the mum guilt ever really goes away.
No.
I think we learn strategies to work on it and to understand it. And I often say to people that if you're going to be a healthy mum, to be able to look after your child to the best of your ability, you need to do self-care measures, because if you don't do something for self-care for yourself, whether it's Pilates or, I don't know, having your cup of tea hot for a change, those little things that make a big difference, then you aren't going to be that resilient mum that you want to be for your little one. And you're also not teaching them skills about the importance of looking after your well-being and your health and your mental health, which is really important. When I used to go out to the park and teach primer size, we used to talk a lot about those babies are taking in that you are exercising for your well-being right now, and as young as they are, it's still going to filter in, because you're setting a rhythm in place for future for yourself.
And that's really true, because now I've done Pilates for a few years and my boys know that's what I'm going to go and do.
Correct.
They're interested in it. Should we do some movement? Is that a Pilates move? What does that look like? And they've taken that interest, and they know that that's what I do.
And it's part and parcel of life. And one of the other things that I have seen a lot is that people can identify exercise like it's a punishment. And so what we're now able to do is to associate for the next generation and our own, is that it doesn't have to be, that it can be pleasurable. It can be something you look forward to. It's something that makes you feel better in your body and in your mental health. It's most certainly not a punishment.
Some exercise can be.
It's in the moment.
That is, yeah, it's a really interesting point, because I think there is that identity of exercise as being, I need to do this so that I'm not fat and I'm not unfit, and but it's almost it's a punishment for eating that
Something,
cake, or that you
exactly.
didn't move, or
I also don't think though that exercise, it needs no exercise needs to have a feeling of punishment, because that's just a mindset around it. It's not the it itself.
Okay.
Because there's nothing wrong with feeling heat in your body, feeling energy, feeling muscular effort, feeling we are designed to do those things. That's not a punishment. It can feel like a punishment if you're not doing it consistently and regularly, or it can feel like a punishment if you go all of a sudden from zero, from the couch to something totally inappropriate. But yeah, it's not,
couch to 5K with nothing in between. That's the way to look at it, isn't it? So finally, I'd really like to talk about, and it's to motherhood in a way, what I'm going to call that I'll do it when mentality. And I know as women, I think we can be really guilty of that.
Oh yeah.
So one of the examples I've seen is that women apply for jobs when they meet all of the job description criteria, whereas men might only meet, say, 60%, but they'll apply anyway, whereas the woman would wait. And I'll apply for that job when, and I've been guilty of that too. You know, I'll apply for that job when I've done that course. I'll apply for that job when I've done that qualification. I'll go for a run when I've lost some weight. I'll go to Pilates when I've got the right clothes. Have you seen that?
Oh, definitely. And I mean, I'm guilty of it just the same as anybody else. You know, I wrote a list of things that I was going to do when my youngest started school, and he's gone into year 5 just now. And there's 2 of the things, like the main 2 that were on that list was horse riding, because I haven't been horse riding since I was, and I love horse. I still have my helmet. I love horse riding. So anyway, horse riding and singing lessons. These are 2 things that are on my, like, when Ewan starts school bucket list. He's in year 5, folks, and I still haven't done those things. So we're all guilty of that. I'll do it when, I'll do it when, I'll do it when. So now I'm like, oh, well, when he starts high school. But anyway, this happens constantly. Well, I need to lose weight before I start Pilates. We were chatting to one of the other business owners who's hurt his back. He's seen the osteopath, and he says, I need to finish seeing the osteopath before I start Pilates. And it doesn't literally, you don't need to have gotten through a course of treatment before you start. You can start anytime.
You there, because I think that's a really common myth, and one perhaps I thought was true, that you might, if you're on a course of a certain treatment and you went gung-ho at Pilates, you might injure yourself further.
You don't want to go gung-ho, and you want to go to a teacher who has knowledge and experience of contraindications and limitations within whatever is happening with you. If you're going to a comprehensively trained Pilates studio on the apparatus, they all will know the standard frozen shoulder, tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, the disc pathologies, any spine conditions, hip replacement. They know this stuff. They absolutely do. But it's absolutely true, because the inquiries that we get are so often, I have this list of things. Is it okay for me to do Pilates? Because the perception is out there that actually you've got to be at a certain point before, and it isn't. They're like, isn't. There just isn't. I can't even.
But I think that is a real revelation for a lot of people, that would do it. Well, I'll do it when this happens and that happens, and when I feel like this is when I'll do it. So when I feel thin enough, when
you move your body, you feel better in your body, then you will eat better to serve your body. You will do more and make more healthy choices. But lack of movement is not going to help improve and get you to those when points, whatever the when is. You know, Joseph Pilates said, movement heals. because it really does, whatever that is, it will heal, because the other one that we all say, motion is lotion.
Yeah, I love that one.
And it's lotion from the inside out.
Yeah.
I was doing a little session with somebody the other day who was having some difficulty, let's say, with digestion. So I said, no worries. I've got a whole series of exercises that we'll do that'll help with your digestion. So we are moving our whole body inside and out. Everything is affected. So anything that needs improved will be improved. I know.
Yeah, no,
There's a lot there.
That's a lot
to unpack.
That's a lot. That's a lot. We've covered so much today. There is so much to digest, isn't there? And I would like to end each episode of the season with a very special Claire shares of the 3 pearls of wisdom from everything that we've talked about today. So what 3 things that we've discussed would you like our listeners to remember? From this episode.
From this episode, not just like life in general. Okay, so I think the first thing that I would say is, when you're questioning and you're having that doubt, ask yourself, is this true, and is there evidence to support it? Because I think sometimes, well, with a lot of the things that we've discussed, we've just busted a bunch of myths out that it actually hasn't been true. Like at the beginning, we're saying, I taught somebody who had a pot on her foot for a long time, and really there isn't a lot of evidence when you start to look at it to say that you aren't, suitable, or it isn't the right time, or whatever it is. So asking yourself, is it true, and is there evidence that supports that? Okay.
I love that one. I honestly really like that one. I think it can apply to so many other areas.
I mean, that's for life.
I'm gonna write that one down and have it
somewhere in front of your desk.
It's true. And do you have evidence?
Is there evidence?
Is there evidence
to support it? Because then you take it to the next level.
And actually, the answer is no, isn't it? Half the time, it's something that you've built up.
Yeah,
within you.
It's the stories in our heads.
Yeah, really like that one. Number 2.
Oh, well, I've heard this before, but I think it really applies to this situation. That is, if not now, when?
Yeah.
So we're really just talking there about the when this, when that.
Yeah.
If not now, when? Like when life is short, and I think we need to, and I think we are right now, appreciating how short life is. And we just need to start taking action, because if you take that first tiny little step, and it just needs a tiny step, Google search Pilates your town. That's the first step. And then before you know it, and on that I think, never leave the scene of a decision without taking some small action.
Unpack that one.
So when you decide, you're listening right now, and you think, what am I doing? I should have started Pilates, or I want to do more, or I want to find out more.
Or try another class.
Explore something else. Just go online and search it up now, or look for an email me, whatever it is, email us. Take an action, and then your brain believes you, it trusts you, it knows that you will follow this through, and that you can do this. That was a bonus. The third one is that one. Bonus. Oh, I'm sorry,
Claire. 3.
Okay, I'm going to save it for another day.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Okay. But those were brilliant. I think that's so much to take away and to action. Really, really love those. So we'll be continuing with the theme of identity in the next episode, and Claire will look forward to sharing more there.
In the meantime, let us know what you think of this episode. Like, share, do all the things you need to help other people find us. And we'd really love you to let us know if there's anything you'd like us to cover in future episodes. And thank you so much for listening. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.